So in the case of like a Starbucks or a Marriott, they have a network and they have like through their loyalty program, they have an app, but their platform is enabling experiences. It's not just people communicating about the brand.
That's right. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Well said.
Hi, I'm Matt Egol, the host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive impact by focusing on customer experience and culture together. I'm really excited to have Jim Lecinski on the podcast today. Jim and I have known each other for a number of years. Thanks for joining, Jim.
Happy to be here, Matt. Nice to see you.
Jim is a clinical associate professor of marketing at Kellogg, following more than a decade at Google, where he led the customer solutions team. I really enjoyed reading Jim's book, which he co-authored with Professor Raj Venkatesan from Darden. The book's called The AI Marketing Canvas. We'll get into more about that today, and there's a second edition of the book that just came out. So thanks again for joining the podcast, Jim. I'm really excited to talking today.
Yeah, as they say, longtime listener, first-time caller. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. I'm going to have a lot of fun. In your book, just to get us going, you talk about AI relationship moments and how organizations can build AI-powered capabilities to reinforce a stronger emotional connection with customers. I'd love to dive into that a little bit more and learn more with our audience about what you mean about AI relationship moments.
I think how we think about this, first of all, is that AI should be in service of an enhancement to, an accelerator to your growth strategy. Seems obvious to say it, but I think you and I both, Matt, have seen lots of marketing teams like chasing shiny objects and, hey, I was at a conference and these guys presented and it seemed cool, so let's just spin up a pilot. Why? I don't know. What are we trying to do with it? I don't know. How do we know if it's successful? I don't know. So, we've seen this sort of shiny object syndrome in wave after wave in the marketing industry, and here we are facing that again. So, what we try to tee up with this notion of relationship moments is starting by saying, like, what point is the relationship at with either your key customer segment or segments, or if you're a micro segment or one-to-one marketer where you've got an individual identifiable customer, financial services, insurance, et cetera, are you at that moment where what we kind of call upper funnel, where they're investigating, making them aware? Are you trying to actually then acquire them and get them to convert? Have they already converted and you want to make sure that they're persistent, that they renew, that they cross-sell, upsell? Or after that, are you in a win-back relationship moment, right, where they might have been a lapsed user? And every company, of course, every marketing group has their different sort of way of explaining that, or their different model for customer moments. But we want to just point out that each of those moments presents a different opportunity for AI applications in marketing, right, to further those relationships. And it's not just about, saving some time or being more efficient, though we like those benefits too.
So these relationship moments, the way I took it from the book is they're really akin to understanding the customer journey. However you want to frame it up, the funnel, the buy and advocate cycle, you coined the phrase the zero moment of truth, to think about the journey. So wherever you are in the journey, with the customer, what are ways to use AI to enhance the experience through more personalization and other content that makes the experience more engaging and more effective at driving your outcomes?
Yes, that's exactly right. So, right, as marketers, we always say, kind of when we're working with our consumers, customers, users, whatever term we're using, right? Like we either want to then accelerate the existing relationship or remove some friction from the relationship, right? And so AI obviously has the ability to do that, offer, for example, more one-to-one personalized, relevant recommendations or messaging. Well, that's enhancing that moment of truth, if you will, and at the same time, getting an answer more quickly about your product or customer service inquiry, that's reducing friction. AI can do either one of those.
What really resonated with me, Jim, was the way you link AI and machine learning as a way to create a continuous experimentation cycle and measurable improvements, really harnessing the potential of AI. We've a lot of times with customer experience, people approach it as a design approach of like developing insights, improving the experience, driving changes, but there's too long a feedback cycle and often not fully taking advantage of the opportunity for continuous improvement. And AI really supercharges this.
Yeah, 100%. Well said. I totally agree. I mean, I think everyone at the moment is, and I would probably say rightly so, enamored with what we'll call right brain generative creative AI technologies. But I love that you started the conversation here early on, pointing out like old school left brain math predictive AI, right? Actually has got many applications and is being used successfully by many marketers. We're now in sort of this world of what I would call whole brained AI, right? Sort of the old school machine learning on the left brain, newer school, right brain generative AI, and those two things together can result in a very powerful toolkit for marketers to apply.
You know, when we met, when I got involved in the Google Shopper Council that you were helping lead, I had recently helped launch Booz Digital, which was a group really focused on connecting analytics and creativity. What we were really focused on was how do you um, apply AI and analytics and agile test and learn approaches to creative and content oriented businesses, whether that was media or consumer or retail or travel or increasingly financial or health, or there are lots of businesses that are very much based on content based experiences along those relationship moments. And I love to see the way you've evolved since Google and the work you're doing that you lay out in the book around helping companies build capabilities around experimentation and around applying AI. So, love to kind of share with the audience more, if you can, how about your own journey and how do you think about the work you do as a professor in helping companies build those capabilities?
Yeah, I think of myself, the red thread of my career, sort of three stages. I did 18 years in the ad agency business, working on some of the biggest brands in the country and international brands globally. Second phase was when we met while I was at Google as vice president of customer solutions for the Americas. And now the last 9 years or so here at Kellogg. What is that red thread is, well, helping advise marketing leaders, whether it's existing chief marketing officers or the next generation of chief marketing officers, on how to build great businesses, right? That is how to drive profitable incremental growth while keeping an eye on our long term brand reputation. And increasingly, doing that successfully requires the understanding and application of AI. And so that's sort of like, I don't know, my three-stage or three-phase journey sort of, on the surface might seem quite different, but that red thread has really been the kind of connective tissue over the 3+ decades I've been doing this.
As a professor, how has that affected the way you think about like thought leadership, conducting research, working on experiments with companies, training leaders? Like how has your focus evolved as a professor as opposed to being at a company like Google?
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity here at Kellogg to have a wider, broader purview. I mean, obviously, wonderful being part of Google, helping drive a lot of the success and growth for both Google, but more importantly for our customers at the time. But here, get a chance to work with all kinds of different technology partners, whether it's writing case studies or just examples that we use in class or guest speakers, as well as my advisory business, my own sort of one man LLC consulting work that I do just gives me a much more broad horizon and also, I guess a sense of neutrality, right? I'm not there sort of pitching or selling anything. It's like, let's work out a problem and see if we can come to a solution together. And so that's been, one of the great opportunities and fun things that I've been doing here at Kellogg.
I can see in the book when you write about the 5 stages of maturity that companies go through with like experimentation through more maturity, through ultimately monetizing the capabilities they build. I could see how you would engage with companies in helping them assess their maturity, build out their canvas to help guide the roadmap. You know, um, how have you applied the book, and how is that? How do you see companies engaging most effectively in the content of the book?
Yeah, I think basically the approach that we lay out is to start by saying, okay, what is it you're trying to accomplish with AI? Like, what is the outcome? Why are you even interested in this? And there's kind of two general outcomes, right? Like, it's either an efficiency, productivity, same outcome, faster, cheaper, or there's a value creation, like a growth transformation outcome. And then those outcomes could be applied either internally to your team, to your workflows, to your process behind your firewall or your four physical walls, and or externally to the things that your customers and constituents see. So, business school professor, that gives us sort of a very nice 2 by 2. And that's sort of always the first starting point, is like, what are you trying to accomplish for whom? And until we know that, we can't even then take a step further. Then from there, as you pointed out, we should say, well, where are you at in this maturity model, which we call how do you go from zero to hero or zero to superhero? And we see so many companies again saying, oh, I think what I need to do is like hire my own PhD floor of PhD computer scientists and build our own algorithms. And like, yeah, but you don't even have any zero or first party data yet. And so it's the kind of classic crawl, walk, run. We would say if you wanted to be a world class Formula One race car driver for Mercedes, Petronas, or whoever, like, you good idea to take driver's ed first and then maybe take a minivan for a spin around the block before you jump in a Formula One car. And that's sort of how we work our way up the model. Where are you at in each of those 5 stages? What does it take for you to move to the next stage, and track your progress along the way? And so that kind of combination of the 2 by 2 of what do you want to accomplish for whom, and then how do we get there, is really sort of the core thesis of but the book, but also my consulting and my class teaching of how marketers should be engaging to become truly AI first or AI powered marketing teams.
I had originally bought the book before the new edition came out, and then had a chance to read the second edition that you shared, and really enjoyed writing a review about it. That people can find the link on the screen to that. And I definitely encourage people to read the book. But you originally wrote the AI marketing canvas before ChatGPT came out, and before all the advances in AI that have accelerated since then across the marketing ecosystem. You know, what are some of the ways that ChatGPT and other recent advances have changed, the opportunities to apply the AI marketing canvas?
Well, look, obviously, what it allows marketers to do is to now, as the name would suggest, right, generate outcomes, outputs, assets at a much more sort of rapid pace, and also sort of allow us to do a whole lot more sort of test and learn, which has evolved with A/B, as you know, Matt, from A/B testing to now multi-arm bandit testing, where we're now right like using a pretty sophisticated matrix, but in order for us to sort of run through our assets through multi-arm bandit testing, we have to create thousands of iterations and versions, which might not have been physically from a time standpoint or even economically from a labor standpoint possible for now, up till now. And so, we see this applied and we recommend it being applied, generative AI, that is, well, at all stages in the marketing workflow. So all the way to upfront, where we're trying to understand what makes our customers tick. We do a lot of building ideal customer persona ICP chatbots. Done this for some Fortune 500 brands where the brand managers now can kind of have a synthetic chat with virtual versions of their target audience on their desk. Now, again, I just want for everybody to be clear, we're not at all, you and I, Matt, suggesting that replaces human research, focus groups, ethnographies, in-home visits. Like, obviously, all of that stuff needs to continue. But the sad or scary truth is that a lot of marketing managers only get a couple of interaction shots, right, during the course of a year. Focus groups a few times a year, store visits, in-home visits. So in the meantime, you're sort of kind of a little bit in the dark. So having the ability to chat with your customers, and generative AI obviously makes that very much possible. So that's early on. We use generative AI then to create ideas and enhance our ideas around new product development, concept testing. You know, famous example of this is Coke's Y3000 brand, right? That was all, generated using OpenAI's tools in partnership that Coke has with them and with Bain in order to generate that new product idea as a proof of concept. And then, when we're ready to create some go-to-market assets, online advertising, video. I mean, obviously, what Sora can do, right? What VO3 can do for Google in terms of realistic video generation. Kind of simply amazing things along the way. So, sort of at each step of the kind of marketing production journey, generative AI can play and is playing really exciting roles.
That has been a constraint for a lot of marketers, and now we're finding ways to break through this and scale things more, which is the time it takes to create content, and to apply insights, create content, optimize it, get it approved, insert it and manage it in the right ways, load it. Where I worked with one CPG client once that they actually spent 300,000 man hours a year creating content. We measured it. When you add it all up, it's a lot of time on like e-commerce pages, promotions, shopper marketing, loyalty. There's a lot of content out there that
A-
people
And
takes human effort.
versioning all that content, translating all that content. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you can create content through your eyes of your personas. You can optimize it. You can generate insights and bring the customer into the room virtually in a simulated way, like you were talking about it. Um, I recently had Nitsan Shire, who's the CEO of Wevo, on the podcast to talk about what they're doing, where they run, hundreds of thousands of user tests through LLMs to create the ability to simulate research, user testing. So I would encourage people to like and subscribe and not to miss any episodes like that. And you could certainly check out that episode. And what Jim's highlighting is that, and comes through in the book, is that you can experiment and work with vendors like Wevo or others. I also had Rex Briggs from Claritas on, who talked about similar things. And then you can experiment early in your maturity. And then at some point, you got to decide how to scale this and decide what do you insource versus continue to work with outside parties, and potentially actually create things you can monetize, and become capable. You want to talk a little bit more about that stage of the maturity curve?
Yeah. So, Matt, you and I have been around long enough to remember the days when every brand needed to build their first website. And those websites were often built and hosted by their ad agency. And that was all well and good until you wanted to change your agency or add an agency or whatnot. And then everyone went, oh, no, no, no. We need to build that competency in house. And now to say it, it's almost laughable, right? Like every brand owns, hosts, runs their own website themselves because it's a strategic asset. And so this is going to be a parallel path, right? Like it's great. You should absolutely start working with partners, working with vendors, big businesses, medium or small. If you're a small business and you're using MailChimp, for example, for your email, great. They have all kinds of, AI generated headline creation, versioning, what time should the email send to whom in your inbox for best optimal open rates. Fabulous. And you should start there. But as you say, at a certain point, like our website example, it's got to come back to some in-house competencies if that's going to be truly strategic advantage. And so at that point, you've run enough experiments with your partners, let a thousand flowers blossom, right? The famous phrase there, that you now have the ability to say, all right, let's start to take a medium swing, not yet a big swing, and do something in-house that we lead. Now, again, we likely still will need partners, but we've flipped who's in the driver's seat and who's in the passenger seat, right? Like we're the brand now in the driver's seat like this. And at that point, then, what you're doing is you're tracking or you're measuring all of your KPIs. I'll call it old way versus new way. When we needed 300,000 hours of labor to do this, right? Like what was the total marketing ROI, not just like ROAS, right? But like you load in all the costs, not just the revenue, and you look at profit, not just sales, old way versus new way. And now you start to build a business case that you can go back to your CFO and say, look, now maybe we need to actually hire some PhD data scientists or acquire a company or a technology or build something out, you actually can make the case at the board level or the CFO level to do that. And ultimately, right, a few companies, not many, John Deere is a good example of this, might have built something internally for themselves that they could actually then license, sell, and monetize as a new revenue stream. But not all companies will get to that. That's our fifth stage of the canvas.
I mean, and a great gold standard of this was that Amazon built their web services business, which is a majority of their profit.
Absolutely, right? And that was originally built internally and now obviously a key profit driver at Amazon. And so there's a few examples like this, but for most companies what we want them to focus on is get some zero and first party data so that you can then bring that to your partners and vendors and use that to apply their existing AI tools, which often have no extra incremental charge to do that. This is Advantage Plus at Facebook. This is Performance Max at Google. This is my MailChimp headline example. Then from there, start to take some swings internally. And then at that point, you're up at the fourth stage of the canvas. Maybe you'll get to that monetization stage, but likely not for most companies.
Jim, what we're highlighting here is everyone's on a learning journey and the company's on a learning journey, and you can think about, how you engage within your organization, how you partner with others, what you bring inside. That's a learning journey. Which is a great segue. I'd love to tee up the for people to learn a little bit more about the mastermind groups that I'm working on with some colleagues. So we'll roll a minute of video on that, and we'll talk more on the other side. Allow me to briefly interrupt the podcast to share an invitation for you to join one of our mastermind groups. These groups are for leaders building out the CX function at their organization. They are for culture champions looking to develop and sustain behaviors that bring their organization's mission, vision, purpose, and values to life. I'm excited to team with Randy Rothenberg, former CEO of the IAB, on a mastermind group focused on experience as a winning marketing strategy. I'm teaming with Tamar Cohen, who has led CX and EX teams at Zoetis and Travelers, on another group focused on CX EX alignment, and with Greg Kihlstrom, host of the Agile Brand podcast, on a group focused on building a self-funding growth flywheel. Each group meets monthly for 90 minutes. Members receive a coaching hour each month and can attend quarterly workshops. Go to JourneySpark's website for more information. Please DM me on LinkedIn with any questions. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Thanks so much, Jim, for sharing some more about your book. I'd like to dive a little bit further into, one thing that really connected with me was this idea about how companies are both networks and nodes, and they, the way that they are pursuing network type businesses is evolving. And what I was thinking about was how a lot of companies have invested in first party data and building relationships along those relationship moments. And that they're going beyond just having data and building a relationship to really building a community, to really becoming more like a network. So I'd love for you to share more about like what's the difference between a network and node, and how are the ways companies pursue those different strategies evolve along their maturity cycle.
Yeah. So, I mean, an easy way to think about this is exactly in the sort of broadcasts, right? Like, I have Xfinity Comcast at home, right? That's sort of the network. And on that network are a bunch of individual channels, ESPN, ESPN8, the Ocho, right? For you dodgeball fans, right? So there's a lot of different individual channels, right? Or nodes on that network. And so where does the value kind of accrue? Well, as my former boss, Eric Schmidt, used to tell us over and over at Google, right? It's much better to be the network than to be a node on the network, because then with that becomes network effects, right? This is the X squared accelerator versus X plus X or 2X, right? So X squared obviously will grow you a bigger business more quickly than a X plus N business along the way. And so, what happens here then is that AI offers you an opportunity to move from being a sort of isolated individual node business to now actually be a network business. And this is sort of John Deere we were referring to before the break there, Matt, right? John Deere right now has built the ability to have a sort of, we'll call it an IoT, Internet of Things, across all of your industrial or agricultural hardware, whether it's their products or somebody else's products. Now, right, through their monitoring systems and predictive analytics, they now have the ability to have moved from a node business to be a network business. And obviously, then sort of the switching cost is much higher to switch from network to network than it is to switch from node to node, and then value creation accrues.
What's the catalyst for becoming a network? Is it having a loyalty program, having better content experiences that people feel like they're part of a community, powering someone's workflow, like the IoT? Like, what gives you the entitlement to become a network that people want to be part of?
Yeah, I would say it's certainly more than just having a community message board. A lot of brands say like, "Oh, we have a place where we can interact with our customers, and if they bring new ideas, and it's a community." We love communities. Don't get me wrong. That's a great. You should have a community. Yes, absolutely. Increasingly, communities now live on Discord for brands, right? Like lots of that kind of thing going on there. But it's the interoperability, right, of your we'll call it platform business to interact with other partners or cousin, sister, brother businesses beyond just sort of your business living in isolation.
Mhm. So in the case of like a Starbucks or a Marriott, they have a network and they have like through their loyalty program, they have an app, but their platform is enabling experiences. It's not just people communicating about the brand.
That's right. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Well said.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good point that companies can be both networks and nodes, and that they have strategic choices to make about what they want, capabilities they want to invest in, depending on how they want to play that out.
I think that's right. And that's a sort of, here we are talking, many companies are in the annual planning. If you're on a calendar year fiscal, right? This time of year is, what's our strategic plan? What's our 3-year plan? And I'm glad you brought that point up, man. I think that's a really good conversation. By the way, not just within the marketing team, but CMO as part of the executive team and a board conversation to say, all right, we are in a moment of great opportunity, but also potential disruption and some potential extinction, right, events for companies if they don't, I'll use Clay Christensen's phrase, cross this next chasm that we're in the middle of. And so thinking about that strategic question was a big question, right? Do we want to continue to live as a node, or is there a network opportunity for us as part of this annual planning cycle? I think would be a great conversation for leadership teams to be having at the moment.
One of the things too is that for the audience here is that your book is not just for larger brands, but also emerging companies that are looking to kind of get that next wave of hypergrowth and build advantage through a culture of experimentation. What do, what do you see as some of the key success factors that help emerging brands kind of nurture those capabilities and retain their culture and what made them successful even as they get bigger?
I think there's a sort of lots of misperceptions about AI and marketing out there, but you've touched on one, which is, oh, this is just going to be sort of an accelerant for the big guys to get bigger, the big brands who have the money to spend on AI and can build out AI teams and do the training. So the rich will get richer and the little companies will be, harder and harder to climb that mountain. I sort of have the opposite belief. Big companies have big company problems. So the data sits in silos, and right now we need a task force and 7 tiger teams, and we'll take that offline and we'll spin up a committee. Whereas a small team, right, like that can do like daily stand up meetings, literally standing up right at 9 o'clock to 9:15 every day to say what do we need to get done by 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. tonight, or the time we go to bed tonight, and then we meet at 7 or 9 p.m. tonight and say, did we get it done? And I think AI has the ability to really act as a leveler, a playing field leveler for some of these challenger brands or startup brands. There are frontier models. And, when I talk about frontier models here, of course, Matt, for everybody we know, we're talking about the OpenAI ChatGPT series of models, the Gemini 2.5 series of models from Google, and then the Anthropic's Claude family of models out there. But they all have, like, we'll just use ChatGPT, for example, has, yes, ChatGPT Enterprise, which is sort of the best in class version that big Fortune 500 companies would use. But ChatGPT Teams is a very powerful tool. And again, I don't want to minimize, $19 a month per user kind of a thing. For a startup, that can be a significant investment. But gosh, right? That tool, having access to a state of the art model for $19 per user with our own zero party and first party data can really allow us, combined with sort of speed of decision making and unified concept of purpose as a small, tight knit team. Gosh, we can really move fast with these tools then.
Just as an example here, I know this is just one example, Jim, but I was working with an education travel client, and rather than like invest a lot of money up front with some of the SaaS vendors to kind of put the platform in place and start doing the system integration and doing all the change management work to drive adoption across the organization. We just did a pilot where we took 10,000 conversations of their salespeople with customers and used the ChatGPT version in Microsoft Azure in a safe environment. And we actually were able to identify personas based on mining the conversations and then optimize the content through the eyes of the personas and get a doubling of their advertising ROI, in a campaign. And now we're applying some of that learning in the website and other things. But we did some of this before making the investments. Now, in other cases, you might do those pilots in a Qualtrics or Medallia or some Adobe or Salesforce or some other platform. But sometimes you can just do it really quickly and then take what you learn there and then apply it in the platform. So there are choices.
Yeah, I love that example, and just building on that, right? So you have structured and unstructured data, transcripts of customer service calls, transcripts of focus group interviews if you're B2C or B2B. But we also have structured data, like these are survey results or past purchase data, et cetera. Yeah, absolutely. You can put that in CSV file or unstructured format into ChatGPT. Ask it to, for example, to do a cluster analysis, like a k-means, factor reduction, Gaussian techniques on that, which now can come up with sort of our number one, number two, number three potential segments. Based on that, we can create ICP chatbots with each of the segments. We can now use that to generate new product ideas or new concepts, and then we can test go-to-market ideas with those ICPs before they go out. I mean, it's amazing that what we can do here. And by the way, that's not like Fortune 500 kind of stuff. For your listeners who are startups, entrepreneurs, smaller businesses, family businesses, this is stuff that you can do. This is, sounds hard maybe, but absolutely, right, Matt? You and I can get people going on this in a span of a week or two.
I think that I think there's been a lot written recently about how AI is affecting the big consulting firms. I used to work at one of them, but I'm now at my own smaller firm that I helped found, JourneySpark. And got your LLC. If folks want to see the Substack I wrote with Randy about how AI is affecting the consulting business, you can see the link on the screen to our Substack Winning Experience. And in this Substack, Jim, what we talked about is how the issue is not just that AI allows you to automate work that some of the team members would do in a consulting firm. It fundamentally changes the way people do work in organizations and the way you think about developing leaders, developing talent. If you don't invest in developing leaders to use the tools, you actually undermine their apprenticeship. So there's a risk of a vicious cycle here if people don't spend the time to develop their people, but there's a huge opportunity if they do. I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, and we're sort of at the -1 step here in an MBA program, right? Like the folks that I work with every day who are rock star talents, come from all around the world with good backgrounds, 7, 8 years of experience, spend a year or two here in business school, then typically would become those junior associates in one of the big consulting firms, right? So you articulated that sort of challenge of the moment at that junior associate level. Our challenge, of course, is like, well, the traditional learning method that we would prepare people to then come work for you, Matt, was written case study, 34-page PDF that either I write or Harvard Business writes, et cetera. And then the assignment would be a write-up. Well, we all have to move on for that because obviously any of us could now take the PDF, put it into ChatGPT, ask it what are the key issues, and ask it to do a write-up. And it would be not too bad. Okay, but of course, that, to your point, sort of cheats or short circuits then all of the sort of structured thinking, leadership, analytic thinking, problem solving ability that, right, we can't just outsource to these machines because then at some point, right, I mean, it's already a little black boxy, but now at some point, right, if we lose the ability to be critical thinkers, then where would we all be?
Well, there's a double-edged problem here, double-edged sword here, which is a huge opportunity if you think about how to engage your people and really build a movement that's broader scale to tap into a broader set of people's energies because it's way more powerful than the low no code movement what we have with AI now. Um, the other downside is that you need to make sure you develop the right skills in your people, and that so that you have to be attentive to that. And I think there's another point here, which I'm sure you'd appreciate, which is just like smaller companies and emerging brands can now ride on other rails and do things differently, like we were just talking about. I think what's happening now is the way companies work with their agencies, with consultants, with professors, that there's actually a lot more fluidity and opportunity to work on these experiments and these opportunities that don't actually require big consulting firms to do the work.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And, you and Randy have written about this as you referred to, but, any business that was sort of based on time and materials, me talking to my family lawyer who bills by the 15 minutes, well, I say, like, that didn't take you 15 minutes, right? You did those edits to the contract. I know, right? With an AI powered contract legal tool. So, now, and we've talked about this in the agency business for years, of course, and consulting business is sort of bill to value, not bill to time. And so, okay, we've all heard this. Some have acted on it, many have ignored it. But now this is, I'll use my phrase, the moment of truth, right? If your business is built on time and materials, well, what does that mean?
Right. So, do you have any um, last thoughts you want to share with the audience about the book and about what you're hoping them to take away from our conversation into their work and their lives going forward?
Yeah, I would say a couple of last thoughts. First of all, I hope you get the sense from our conversation here today that i- the train is leaving the station. It hasn't left the station, but kind of now is time to get on board, right? We say it's still not too late to be early, but I don't know, Matt, if you and I get together at this time next year, it might be too late, right? Like these things, technology moves at an exponential rate. And so 1, 2, 4, right? 8, 16, 32. So now maybe we're in the 1, 2, 4, 8 moment. But if you sit this one out and think, oh, this is like another hype cycle from Silicon Valley, and I heard this all about blockchain. Where is that today? And like want to ignore this? I would say ignore this at your own peril, right? The second point is you can do this, right? Like most marketers didn't come up from a computer science background, right? They may come up from the creative side of the house or join marketing for those kind of creative right brain reasons. And it might sound intimidating. You can do it. But in order to do it, you have to get on the surfboard, right? Like you can't watch a PowerPoint about surfing and expect to become a competent surfer. At some point, you got to get in the water and get wet. Make sure you are spending at least bare minimum 1 hour a week reading about this stuff and 1 hour a week using this stuff. And if that's even helping your kids with their homework, if that's, Ralph Lauren just put out a really fun new app last week to help, identify your personal style and some clothing choices, even if that's not your business, right? Like play with it, use it, ride the wave, surf the surfboard. Don't sit on the sidelines and don't just watch PowerPoints about this. Do it, use it, try it.
And engage your teams and help them to learn to do it and try it. And to build on Jim's point, as a leader, be intentional about how you're applying this yourself, but also how you want to coach and develop others and drive the right behaviors in your organization.
Yeah. +1. Well said.
Yeah. You've sparked a lot of great ideas for me, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really had a lot of fun talking today and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on today, Matt.